Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the WrestleManiac UK show. Myself, Max. We are here having a discussion today, a podcast for you. So make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel. I am here with the one and only SP3 from True Hill Heat. SP3, how you doing, bro?
I am doing well. Glad to be on here. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure when we can link up and talk wrestling. Um, what have you been up to recently? Any projects or anything you've been working on?
Just been busy with the True Hill Heat schedule coming off the heels of like WrestleMania week. I was doing like 2 to 3 shows a day. I do the Fightful Overbooked in the Wii show every Tuesday and Thursday with Jeremy Lambert talking about wrestling news. I do writing for Sports Illustrated. Right now, I don't think I'm working on anything in particular over there. I usually get in trouble with my lists, and my editor hasn't gave me any lists to do lately, so I can't say I have any major projects on that end. And Wrestle Talk, I do some written work over there, but usually it's True Hill Heat where I'm there pretty much every day because wrestling never stops. It never ever stops.
It never stops. People say that I'm the hardest working guy out here. You are always live. You are always live and doing your stuff, no matter what it is, if it's WWE, AEW, New Japan. And then like you say, I see your pieces on Wrestle Talk as well all the time. So yeah, you're definitely a man that's busy. So I appreciate you taking out some time to join me today and entertain my foolishness. I'm sure if people are reading the title of today's podcast, they're thinking, what is going on? What are you saying, Max?
You're gonna get me in trouble for even being here. I'm gonna get hit up by people that work at AEW. Like, why did you even do this podcast? But I'll do anything for Max. Max is one of the good brothers. He is one of the hardest working men in wrestling media. So I had to do it,
man. I'm trying. Thank you. So yeah, we're gonna have a chat today about AEW, WWE, and I know, like I say, the title talking about AEW looking like WWE's developmental, but I think it's a deeper maybe issue, a deeper thing that we need to kind of uncover and see why it's why it's kind of looking this way, should I say. Not everything is as it appears. Like I said, this is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek title, but like I think it's not what it appears to be like, and it'll be really good for all of those watching live, and if you're going to watch it back later, put your 2 pence into the comments and chat with us, and what you think. I'm going to start from the point of back in the 90s, specifically the late 90s, and I know I see you as one of these like wrestling historians, hence why I thought you were a good person to kind of get on board for this discussion. WCW, WWE, or WWF at the time, and with people going back and forth. I know we didn't have mediums like social media like as prevalently then. We had the forums and things of that nature, if you were old enough to remember that. But what did that look like in terms of uproar and people's reactions when someone would jump from show to show and stuff like that? And what was like people were people getting irate and people kind of wondering, why can't WWF, particularly at that time, I think it was more so than the other way, why can't WWF keep their stars? I know money would have been like a large thing, but what was like those discussions around that time, if you remember?
Yeah, it was mostly like a money stuff. Like those were the two major promotions at the time. So I remember like reading like the dirt sheets were in like the internet because the internet wasn't like really that popular in like especially like in the early 90s to mid 90s. I used to read a lot of like dirt sheet insider information. It used to come out in New York City in the Daily News. My mom used to every Sunday there would be an article written by this guy named the Slammer. And he's a guy in like a taped mask that used to give you like information, insider information on pro wrestling. And I remember like in 1996, right before the famous MSG house show in May of 1996, where the curtain call happens. That's when it first came out. Like I think like a few weeks before that house show was like Diesel and Razor Ramon are on their way to WCW, and it was always a money thing. It was like they got a big money offer and they were going in that direction. But it was always kind of back and forth because like in late 1995, I heard the information that, oh, Cactus Jack is on his way to WWE, WWF at that time. So it used to be back and forth, and it was very fluid as far as like the developmental talk. Really, in those days, it wasn't WCW or WWE. You wouldn't hear any talk of, oh, WCW's making these stars, and then it's a developmental. These guys are developing over there to go to WWF, or WWF has this major star that developed there that's going to WCW. The developmental was really ECW. It was ECW and whatever was left of the territories, like your Smoky Mountain Wrestling, your UWF, those smaller promotions were like the developmentals where guys earned a name for themselves to go to a WCW or a WWF at that time. So mainly it wasn't, I think there was uproar as far as if you were like a WWF fan, if you were a WCW fan, you didn't want to see your guys go the other way. But I don't think it was like this talk of, oh, this major promotion is a developmental for other promotion, where nowadays in the internet you're getting like fresh reactions, and that's why people say these terms where I don't really know if they know the meaning of these terms.
No, I hear you. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah, I can hear you. Your screen is frozen, but I can hear you.
Okay, I don't know what the heck my camera is doing. But yeah. So okay, so yeah, like I assumed, and it was pretty much down to money. The thing right now is, we know that in terms of the finance thing with AEW and WWE, it's not a thing. Like, in some aspects, AEW are offering more money than WWE. So why is it seemingly an issue, do you think, if we start from the AEW side? And again, no one needs to take this out of context or anything. It's just right now there's seemingly a lot of direction from AEW to WWE. So if money is not an issue, what would you say is the reason really driving people from AEW to WWE?
Well, I think it's a case by case thing. If you really like think about, especially like the people that have moved over in just like this past year or the last 12 months or so, it's been mainly, you have a guy like a Ricky Starks who kind of hit a ceiling in AEW, but he's also a guy that was always kind of viewed as a guy that always wanted to be in WWE or was more tailor-made. His skills as a talker and a character was always more tailor-made for the WWE landscape. Then you got your peoples like your Stephanie Vicares and your Mariah Mays, who grew up in a time like 6 years ago. There was no AEW. There wasn't a second major promotion where you could make big money and be a star for that promotion. It was just WWE. For the past 20 years, it's only been WWE. They were the end all be all. And before that, they were really the end all be all. Like WWE, you can make an argument that everywhere is a developmental for WWE, dating as far back as the early 80s when Vince McMahon ended the territory days and did the Black Saturday and took over Turner Broadcasting for a bit before lawsuits and everything else came into play. So like Mariah May and Stephanie Vicaire, with Stephanie Vicaire in particular, she admitted in an interview she took a pay cut to go to WWE because WWE was her dream. The dream is bigger than just getting a big money type of thing. So I think it's like a case by case study. I don't really think that it's AEW is a developmental for WWE, because I think that most of the people that, except for your Mariah Mays, all the people that are like going from AEW to WWE kind of already hit their ceiling in AEW of everything they can do, and those most of the people that are going in that direction, like your Miros and your Malachi Blacks, already made their name in WWE, and they know that WWE is the number one promotion, so they always wanted to go back there. They never viewed AEW as the alternative or second major promotion where they can make good money and be a big star. They always was kind of making a pit stop before they go back to where they wanted to be.
Yeah, I think as a fan base, we've maybe forgotten that especially the likes of Miro, Andrade, Aleister Black, they left because they were pushed out. They left because
Yes.
their contracts, were pulled from underneath them, so to speak, and they have to go and find a job. Like, if any one
Yeah.
of us lost our job, you have to go and find another job. You can't just sit at home and wait for WWE to call you back. So that's what they did, and maybe they wanted to probably have some level of success in AEW. For whatever reason, that didn't quite, come to fruition for them, and now they have seen a way to go back to where they didn't necessarily want to leave in the first place, and they've gone back. So cool. Mariah May is an interesting one because even from her time on the British indie scene, for those that are aware and stuff like that and have known her personally and stuff like that, they would know that she is a WWE stan. I would say,
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
wants to be there. That's what she's always wanted to do. Do you see her? For firstly, how do you think she kind of negotiated like what is seemingly a 2-year contract in AEW? Like, how do you think that worked out?
Well, if you want to like go with like a developmental, I think that Mariah May's developmental time was really her run in Stardom. Because, like you said, she came up in the UK Indies. She even got a tryout in the NXT UK days, and there was a lot of controversy and stuff that happened there that made her kind of, or made WWE or her come to that mutual decision where that wasn't the place where she needed to be. And then she goes over to Stardom and becomes a star. And I think that I don't know why Tony Khan would agree to a 2-year deal when at the time like WWE and AEW were signing like 3 to 5 year deals. But I think it was more or less like, hey, you're doing so well in Stardom. How about you come here? And I think that she worked it out where she can have a 2-year run with AEW, see if she can gain some notoriety, which she did in a major way in one of the greatest storylines in AEW history. But I think that this was probably a Mariah May decision more than an AEW decision because, like you said, it goes so against like what we usually hear about these contracts. These contracts are like 3 to 5 years in length. So I think it was more Mariah May kind of had some negotiation pull where she can be like, maybe I don't want to sign with AEW. Maybe I want to stay with Stardom a little while longer. This is when Rasi Ogawa, who was the original president for Stardom before the Bushi Road merger, he's I mean, for better or worse, I don't know what a better term, but I've been saying it for a year. Rossi, he twerks for WWE. He was like, you want EO Sky? Here, have some money. Here, take that. He backs it up for WWE. So I think that Mariah had the chance to where she could have stayed with Stardom for another year and still gotten that attention from WWE. Maybe she's not getting the what WrestleVotes has reported as an outstanding offer from WWE like she's gonna get after this successful run in AEW, but maybe she had a little bit more stroke than it's coming out that she was able to negotiate a 2-year deal over what would typically be a 3 to 5 year deal with AEW.
Yeah, it's a fantastic piece of business by Mariah May, I must say, because especially, if I'm just looking at it as she's a woman that's going to AEW where they haven't really had a really good track record. And obviously we're talking about before she arrived in terms of handling the women. Since she's been there, it has been a lot better. Tony Storm and her have told what I've said is probably one of the greatest stories told in women's North American wrestling. Like, I think it was a phenomenal story that they managed to tell. It's a shame that they kind of dropped the ball when Mariah became champion. And then obviously they put the belt back on Tony now. To get a 2-year deal when, like you said, the landscape is 3 to 5 across whatever company is something special and has worked in her favor. She's had a killer story, and now she can basically walk out at the top of her game, sort of thing. And even if she's going to stay in AEW, use that as really strong leverage to negotiate another contract. I'm going to dive into the comments here. I just want to apologize. I don't know what the heck my camera is doing, and I'm trying to sort it out. But just bear with. Quadir Shakur says it's nothing but a bunch of internet marks that's making a big deal about this. I guess he's talking about the general title. I knew I was gonna shake people up the wrong way. Curb Your Gimmick says no, they're not, as in AEW is not WWE's developmental. Big up Navy. He says 2-year contract is kind of beast. I can't lie. He goes on to say, I don't like long deals for young talent. I think that's a really good point as well. And they should be moving around. Curb Your Gimmick also says that TNA is going to be that in terms of, I guess, developmental for WWE. And B says here, if Tony Khan was serious about his brand, he'd put non-compete clauses in the wrestling contracts. Wads of cash can only keep people around for so long.
Well, to answer that one, non-compete clauses are usually for releases.
Yes.
Like there's no WWE doesn't have non-complete clauses for people whose contract expires. If your contract expires with WWE, you have the option to go somewhere else. We just saw this with Ricochet. Ricochet made the decision to let his contract run out. WWE offered him a new deal, but he decided to wait until it was expired because he knew he had probably already been talking to the likes of like your Will Ospreys and stuff like that. And he's like, yo, Tony giving out the bag, and you could get a better chance to wrestle over here and do what you kind of want to do instead of kind of just being in the pigeonhole that WWE had him in as high flyer number 1 or 2. You can kind of explore some other things in your career, and it's worked out very well for Ricochet. Like non-compete clauses is only for releases, and AEW has rarely done like releases. Like they've done a couple in the last like 2 to 3 years where they did like a couple of like lower card people that they weren't really using, like your Nick Camarados, your Layla Hirsch, who I think that was a mistake to let her go because I thought she was doing good work over in Ring of Honor. And like that's also another thing that I think that if Tony would focus on making Ring of Honor an actual developmental for him, then you can have some use of your lower card people if you shift your lower card people into an actual developmental, which trust me, I have a couple of friends that work in AEW, and I'm just like, why isn't he doing this? I've been asking the same questions since 2023. I was like, this should be your developmental. This should be your NXT. And he just hasn't done that. And it's kind of let whatever name value or brand value that Ring of Honor has kind of bleed out before our eyes. But yeah, they're like non-compete clause is a little bit different with a contract expiring. There's no WWE or AEW doesn't have that.
Yeah. Just on the point where you mentioned Ring of Honor, right? Like I was saying this yesterday, and it's not the first time I've said this, but it ran true because the conversation around AEW now or Ring of Honor introducing this pure women's championship. I was asking the question, so what? Like, what's the meaning of this sort of thing? Like, Ring of Honor has basically been the rebranded AEW Dark, AEW Elevation, for those that remember that. And it absolutely shocks me because I thought if anybody is going to be, holding the name of Ring of Honor in any reverence, it would be Tony Khan. And yeah, you don't want, it's not to say send Kenny Omega there and stuff like that to hold that name value, but it could easily be the developmental, the stomping ground, the dojo for these young people to hone their craft and move on up the card. Like the likes of, what's her face? Red Velvet. I don't know what Red Velvet is still doing there. She was on early Dynamite. Now the answer may be she hasn't maybe developed enough to get a spot from one of those women. But then why not? So you're just basically paying her to hold another belt, another trinket, and she's not really doing much. Like it really annoys me that they have such a name that is a cornerstone in professional wrestling under their umbrella, and they're not holding it to any regard, and it's like an active name. And especially where we're seeing the likes of Alexis King go over from whatever he was called in
Brian Pillman Jr.
Pillman Jr. That's it, in AEW, and he's become Alexis King in NXT. It's like ultimately he's gone looking for that development. Now there's other people that I've kind of banded into this conversation, like a Ricky Starks you mentioned earlier and a Ethan Page that moved across. I don't necessarily think those guys need to go through developmental
No.
in WWE, but maybe so they're in NXT to kind of help boost NXT, learn the WWE way, of doing certain things in TV before they move on. And I suppose they will move on up the card and up to the main roster very, very quickly, sort of thing. Do you see? I mean, you mentioned earlier that that all of these promotions are basically WWE's developmental, and WWE will pick off the best of the best from them. Do you think who are other names in AEW right now that you can see maybe, let's speculate a bit, once their contracts are up, maybe based on how they've been being booked and stuff like that, and spaces available in WWE, who else could you see kind of making a move potentially?
I think like the guys that kind of were in WWE and kind of let go too soon with like releases, like your Keith Lee's. I think that he's probably got more injury time on it because he's been out for over a year. He hasn't competed on WWE in AEW since December of 2023. So they probably added on another year onto his deal. But once that's done, or if he wants to go the route of your Ricky Saints, of your Rusevs, your Miros, your Malachi Blacks, your Ray Phoenixes, and negotiate your release, he's the type of guy that I could see going back to WWE and going straight to the main roster, where he could probably get a better push under Triple H than he did with Vince McMahon, which is funny because Vince McMahon was the one who saw Keith Lee as a star even before Triple H. Because I don't know if a lot of people remember, but Keith Lee before Survivor Series 2019 was not booked very well on NXT. It was Vince McMahon that was like, oh my God, this guy's a monster. And then Triple H was like, oh yeah, I should probably push him like a star. And that's when Keith Lee actually got a push on NXT television. But I think that now with Triple H as the head of creative, he might have a better chance to kind of get a more established foothold over in WWE. Wardlow is another one who's kind of been injured and on the sidelines that would fit in well because he's got the look, he's got the agility to go over to WWE, and he's probably one of the guys that I would say you probably should start him out in like an NXT to introduce him to the crowd over there. Your Britt Bakers, who is one of the original stars of AEW, but this is another thing of like with your Lucha Bros. Well, more like Lucha Bros is more of in the Stephanie Vicaire route of WWE was always their dream, but they hadn't got like the star power and the notoriety from your Triple A's, from your Lucha Undergrounds, from your Impact Wrestling. So in 2019, they made the decision to go to AEW, but they are day one AEW guys who really became stars there, and that's what Britt Baker was. But I feel like with the Lucha Bros, with how Tony Khan books, they pretty much hit their ceiling. Their ceiling was top AEW tag team. He was never going to push Penta on his own and never going to push Ray Phoenix on his own. And regardless of WWE separating them and putting out single stars, guys, I don't know about y'all, but I already feel like Penta and Phoenix are already going to be just guys on their own. You need to put them together where they can really become stars in the WWE umbrella, because that's what the route that they're probably going to have to go to really get their maximum potential. But with Britt Baker, she's already hit that ceiling in AEW. And like you said before, AEW from 2003 when Mariah May comes in is way different when it is right now in 2025, and a lot of women have skipped over Britt Baker, your Jamie Hayters, your Chris Statlanders, your Willow Nightingales, your Timeless Tony Storm, your Mercedes Moné, even someone like a Billy Starks is fresh and new and feels good on AEW television. They've all skipped ahead of Dr. Britt Baker DMD. They've already hit that ceiling with her, and what we saw during her comeback in 2024, it kind of showed us that she's already hit her ceiling here. She needs to probably move on to get any type of success again in the wrestling industry. And WWE has always been kind of tailor-made for someone like her, like I said before, that's mainly about her mic skills and her character work. So I think that she would be one of the people that would be better suited going over to WWE. But those are the ones that kind of like come to mind just off like the top of my head. I'm sure if I think like harder, there's probably more people, but someone like a Jay White, I think down the road, I think Jay White would do great in WWE, and I thought he was going to go to WWE when he left New Japan Pro Wrestling, but when he left New Japan, WWE had their hiring freeze, and I think that he can do more in AEW, and I'm hoping he will do more in AEW, but he's probably a guy that's more better suited for the WWE style where he can kind of break out and become a star over there. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that everyone, regardless of how big or how small they are, is going to be a developmental to those people who are thinking that AEW is a developmental. In actuality, I don't think AEW is a developmental because I think that people in general don't understand what a developmental is. A developmental is where you develop into the star, you work out being a character, a babyface, or a heel to get a big money deal in a bigger promotion. Thus, AEW can't be a developmental because people are getting paid more in AEW a lot of times than they are in WWE. WWE was willing to, they told Stephanie Becaire, oh, you got to deal with AEW. Well, bye. If you want the more money and the lighter schedule, bye. Will Ospreay chose to go to AEW because he was getting a better schedule where he can go and live in the UK and still make big money and wrestling less. And then what was Triple H's response? Not, oh, we let one go. No, one of the best wrestlers in the world, he said, is running from the grind. Who we all know Will Ospreay is not the guy who runs from the grind.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I think that that's very, it's a foolish sense, but I do get why we're talking about it is because there are people that think that say, oh, Ricky Saints went over there, Tony fumbled, Ethan Page went over there, Tony fumbled. No, they kind of just hit their ceiling with what they were going to do in AEW. Yeah. Could have AEW done more with both of those guys? 1000%. But are we going to put Ricky Saints over your Kenny Omegas, over your Will Ospreays, over your Swerve Stricklands, over your Hangman Adam Page, over your MJF? I don't know about y'all, but if I had the pen, no.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's a good point you raised there. I think again to kind of go back to the title of this, I agree with you. AEW is not developmental for WWE. I see it just more as, you know, WWE is still, you know, the biggest company in the business. And, you know, yes, this is a new age of wrestler that we're dealing with, but these guys and girls still would have grown up on the WWE, you know, at the very least, not if not WWE, you know, that mid TNA period, 2005, 6, 7 TNA, if they don't want to kind of say they grew up on WWE. So yeah, we're just seeing people fulfill their dreams of, you know, they didn't aspire to ever, oh, when I grow up, I want to, you know, feature in the main event of AEW All In, because AEW All In didn't exist. So,
exactly.
You know, all they're doing is living out their dream.
We're like 2 decades away from anybody saying, oh, I grew up on AEW. Like, it's been around for 6 years. There's no way. Like, WWE has been the main show in town for the better part of now 40 plus years. 40 plus years, and probably goes back farther than that. You'll get people that you talk to that grew up in the territory days, and even then they used to be like, yeah, you know, it's good, I became a star in Georgia, but I always wanted to go to New York. That's what WWE was referred to back in the territory day. New York, it's the bright lights, it's Madison Square Garden. That's always been the big show. So we're going on like 50 years of WWE being the number one promotion in the world. They had like a brief 2-3 year run where WCW was number one or pushing for that spot, but nothing's come close. Like, AEW had their window to even push up to a significantly close number 2, but they had all that backstage stuff with CM Punk that made all that fall apart. And then also at the same time, it was like the perfect storm for WWE. Vince McMahon gets removed, Triple H comes in, their product gets better. At the same time, AEW is dealing with their drama. So there's no way. We're never going to get close to AEW being a close number 2. They're a number 2 for sure. They're a number 2 promotion in the world, but WWE is so solidified as number 1. It's not even close.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just to look at it on the WWE side of things, I'm sure you are tuned into LFG and have
Yeah,
been watching
that's my show.
that. Yeah, I really do like LFG. I think we were talking about it on Wrestling's podcast. Like, it's
Yeah.
the best iteration of Tough Enough since
Yes.
they've been trying to do Tough Enough back in the mid 2010s and stuff like that, when they tried to bring it back and stuff. With LFG, what's your general opinion on LFG Evolve, even the whole WWE ID thing, and them using the indies now in this respect to kind of attract talent, as well as using their roots from the Nil program, and getting the kids from the colleges and stuff.
I really like LFG. I'm a big reality TV show buff, and I always enjoy a good reality TV base. But WWE hasn't always done well with adapting it. Even like the original Tough Enough wasn't perfect, but this is more of like the better version of a Tough Enough, because you're not getting guys at like a casting call who always wanted to be a wrestler, or these bodybuilders who failed who are coming to try to be a wrestler, or football players who failed who's trying to become a wrestler. These are already people that have probably failed at their original passion, and have already been in the PC. I've already come to the performance center, and WWE see some type of value and equity in them. So you can like who you want to like. You could see kind of the flaws of them, but you also get the perspective of kind of learning their mindset and learning who they are outside of the character that they're going to play on TV. Like I love the fact that we've been introduced to someone like a Cutler James, who's in like the main faction in NXT Dark State, but we got to see him as the upper Cutler, and his whole rivalry with BJ Ray, and how they came up in the Duke University, and how he's a guy that really doesn't have that much personality, and then gets let go from LFG. So it, like when you show the episode 11 of LFG where he gets let go and told good luck on your future endeavors by Bubba Ray, and then you see him talking to Shawn Michaels, you're like, oh, that's how he got to Dark State. So that's cool that you kind of see the Thero line, and then you get the Undertaker introducing Shiloh Hill and Jasper Troy and Anthony Luke on this week's NXT, and I'm popping because I'm an LFG fan. I'm like, oh, that's the Hellraiser, Shiloh Hill. That's the Reaper, Jasper, the monster, Jasper Troy. That's Anthony Luke. I've been calling him 1995 Flex Cabana, because he looks exactly like The Rock did when he was Rocky Maivia. Like, yeah, this, like, all of that stuff is exciting because you get to see them at the ground floor before they actually go to these main shows. I really love LFG, and I think they did a good job on that. I'm open to changing my mind with season 2, because I don't like the fact that we're replacing Mickie James, who has a bunch of experience outside the WWE bubble, in the independent scene, in TNA, all this stuff that can help these kids, and we're replacing it with someone who only knows the WWE way and stuff the Undertaker taught her in Michelle McCool. So I'm holding out my expectations for season 2. I will watch just to be like, I was wrong. This sucks, but I'm holding out my expectations there. As far as WWE Evolve, that's another show that I have been watching because I was a big fan of Evolve. That was like mid 2010s. Like my independent viewing was really like Evolve. I used to go to La Boom, which was the home of Evolve in Queens, New York, all the time. That's the first place that I discovered like your Darby Allens, your Ethan Pages, your Austin Theories, your Orange Cassidys. Was the first time I saw them was in La Boom in Queens, New York. Johnny Gargano, Ricochet, Zack Sabre Jr. Like, the first time I saw them live was all in that building. So I love Evolve, so I've been willing to kind of give it a chance with this. But it really, when I really break it down and I talk about it over on Fightful every week, I always say it's basically mid 2010s NXT. It's NXT when it first came to WWE Network. It's an hour-long show. You get some character pieces, some pre-recorded stuff where you get to know these characters. They get a chance to wrestle. Not everybody's the best. There's some people that you can see immediately is ready for NXT and the main roster, like a Shawn Legacy. I love the Vanity Project and Swipe Right. I think Swipe Right is another one that's ready-made for NXT, and Zeta Steele's another one, 21 years old, but she has the experience in Japan and MLW. She's ready for NXT. But then there's other people that's like failures from NXT that's coming over here, like your Javier Bernal, and I'm like, yeah, this is probably better for you than being in NXT.
Yeah.
So it's I like the mixture of talent. As far as the WWE ID, I'm very much on the fence on it. Like I've heard the perspective from like wrestlers. Like I got to talk to Joey Janela before Joey Janela's spring break in WrestleMania week, and he said like he likes the WWE IDs things because it's giving money to these guys that are coming up on the independent scene that, you know, don't have the money to get your pre-workouts and get from town to town, city to city, travel, the stuff they need when they're in these cities and go, you know. I like the fact that WWE is giving these people an opportunity, but it's just an opportunity. It's not like a real contract. So that's why I'm like, and I don't really like the fact that WWE is homogenizing the independent feeling.
Yeah.
Like how much WWE was on the GCW collective. I did get a funny feeling about it. Like Bloodsport. I love Bloodsport. That's like my favorite show, and it was a really good show in Las Vegas. But there was a lot of WWE talent on it, and a lot of the matches went pretty much the same of WWE talent winning. So it's just like, okay, we're just coming here for the lower card WWE people to beat up on the independent stars. I don't know how I feel about that. So I'm very much that, like, out of all the things that you just brought up and I just talked about, the one that I'm mainly like on the fence of, I'm not in support of. Like I'm in support of LFG. I'm in support of Evolve.
Yeah.
WWE ID, I'm very much on the fence.
Yeah. You're right, and that's where I am as well. I think you can see the clear path with LFG and with Evolve. You can understand how they're going to get into the WWE system. The WWE ID isn't necessarily as clear. And yeah, right now it just seems like they want to have their foothold on the independents. The belt thing that they're going to do and, you know, crown WWE ID champions, I think is very weird. So yeah, I think we'll kind of see, you know, what that looks like. As for the WWE stars turning up at GCW and Bloodsport and all this other stuff, you know, Natalia Neidhart's going to be in the Crockett Cup and stuff like that. I think it's like nice little cool spots and stuff like that. More so, these companies want a WWE name to help boost ticket sales and stuff like that. So you know, WWE probably, yes, have a clause like, okay, we're sending you this person, don't make them look like a chump. But at the same time, the promoter wants to sell tickets. So, you know, it's kind of a win-win situation. But I think in terms of like a development model and, you know, these branches, and, you know, we haven't even spoken about the AAA deal that's happened now and how that what that's going to look like. And I think that's a whole nother conversation. I'm sure WWE will still be looking to find their way into Japan. Like you said, they've got Rossi under the claw, as they say, and you know they're probably getting a lot of ladies from Marigold in the future. But I think they'll probably, you know, want their hands on maybe Noah, if not any other kind of promotion as well. We're kind of back at this global localization thing that Triple H once upon a time talked about, and having NXTs all over the world basically feeding into the WWE system. And yeah, where we have Evolve and NXT, LFG, these are creating their WWE superstars in their likeness and how WWE want them to be, which some people have also said, you know, and I'll throw the question to you. Do you see a problem with that? The fact that it's like we are teaching hundreds of these men and women, these young boys and girls, the same way of wrestling. There's not like a lot of differentiation between them because they're kind of all learning from the same coaches, going through the same process. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. Any idea of like global localization, like the reason why I am a pro wrestling fan is not because I just watched the WWF when I was a kid. My grandmother used to always have a routine on Saturdays. We would watch WWF Saturday morning, 11 a.m. on whatever local station it was on for WWF Superstars or WWF Wrestling Challenge. But the thing that really made me become a wrestling fan was the fact my grandmother would turn on at 6:05 p.m. Eastern Time, TBS, and they would have your WCW Saturday nights. It was
Yeah.
not just one type of wrestling. Like if I wanted the big characters and the charismatic figures and these kind of over the top, over the top characters, it would always be WWF. But if I wanted more of a gritty style and more of the pro wrestling, the catch as catch hand, your technical wrestling, plus some brawls and some Cactus Jack and Vader, or I wanted to see also a mixture of like the colorful characters, like someone like a Sting, I had WCW there. Then I got a little bit older. I was like 9, 10 years old, and I would stay up till on Saturday night. I would sneak into the living room, and my mom would let me stay up a little bit longer. At 1 a.m., I would turn on MSG, and I would see ECW, and I'm like, whoa! I'm seeing blood. I'm seeing people going through tables. I'm seeing sexy women, and I'm just like, whoa! My mind's blown. This is crazy. That's what made me a pro wrestling fan. And then WCW would open me up to New Japan stars like Jushin Thunder Liger and your Masahiro Shono. And I would get the tapes from like my cousins who would have the tapes of like your All Japan and your New Japan, your King's Road stuff. That's what made me a pro wrestling fan. You need all these different promotions that are kind of separate from each other. If WWE is just going to go and take from your AAA and make that NXT Mexico and turn Noah, which been such a prominent promotion for me from like my late teens into my 20s, of like I would watch Ring of Honor and I got discovered to your Kenta Kobashis and your Kentas and your Narumichi Marufuji, and that's what made me be like, okay, I got to seek out Noah and see Kobachi versus Masawa. Like if that's going to become NXT Japan, I'm just like, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch NXT. I don't want everything to become NXT. I don't want everything to become like NXT. I like NXT some weeks, but then some weeks I'm like, this is bad acting, and they only really let people show out in the matches on the premium live events. If I have to watch weekly NXT in Japan and in Mexico, I don't know how I'm gonna feel about that. So I don't like the global localization. It's just WWE becoming more of a monopoly. And I think that really hurt the business for close to 20 years when WWE closed down and bought WCW and ECW. It hurt my love for the business for a very long time. I was still able to kind of keep a touch on it, but when I'm starting high school, I wasn't as active as I am nowadays, and I wasn't as active as I was when I was in elementary school, because it was like, it's totally different now. It's just WWE is the main show in town, and it wasn't until I discovered your TNAs and your ROH that I got tapped back in to pro wrestling. So if everything is going to become WWE and a monopoly again, I don't know how long I could do this as a profession anymore.
Yeah, I hear you. Navy says, God bless King's Road for sure. And he says, AAA, I don't care, but don't come after my precious arc. Yeah,
I'm
it's
with you.
100%. Like I think, I'm very interested about the AAA deal. I was a bit cautious then when I heard that Jeremy Borash is going to be creative there and stuff like that. Because that's what now starts making it into a WWE product. I don't mind if we have affiliation with Noah and AAA, but let those guys and girls within those organizations book the show and stuff like that. And then when WWE wants to come cherry picking their top guys, then they can come into the WWE system. But we don't need like you say, a Mexican NXT and a Mexican or a Japanese NXT. Keep those products authentic, because we already have hundreds of these boys and girls in the performance center learning how to wrestle and stuff all the same way already. So yeah, we still need to kind of keep the differentiation in wrestling, I reckon.
Yeah, I feel what Navy's saying, because AAA, man, God bless all those WWE fans. It's like, oh, we got AAA. You could tell they've never watched
They've
AAA
never
in like
watched
the
it.
last several years. That's not a flex.
Yeah,
It's one of the worst promotions in pro wrestling today, and they
yeah.
got like 13 people under contract. It's not a flex. It's not a flex. Conan, I hope you're watching this. It's not the flex that you think. That you think, oh, I showed you Tony Khan. There's a reason why Tony Khan didn't buy you.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
knows. He
This is
watched.
a
He's a
this is
fan.
a yeah, this is a lifeline for AAA for more than anything,
Yeah,
because it's not ran very well. Like you said, there's not a lot of people left on contract. Oh God, I don't know the last time I watched a Triple Mania, maybe about 3 years ago. Maybe one of the last times when Kenny Omega was still mega champion was one of
yeah,
the last ones
yeah.
I watched. Yeah, ever since then I've maybe picked a couple of matches and watched here and there, but yeah, I'm not watching that show because it's just not good enough.
No,
So yeah, this is almost a lifeline that WWE are definitely using as a foot in Mexico. Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation, man, and I think just as we kind of bring it towards a close, WWE and its developmentals in terms of Evolve, NXT, WWEID program, then we've got this kind of affiliation with TNA, which I think that needs to be, if there's anyone that's going to probably be bought next or somewhere down the line, it could probably possibly be a TNA.
yeah.
Triple A as well.
This is why the title isn't. TNA is secretly part of WWE Developmental. It's TNA is openly a part of WWE Developmental.
We already know that one is in the
We
bag.
already, yeah, that's not a question. That's not a question. That's why Mex chose the right title here, folks, because we already know TNA is openly a WWE Developmental at this point. Joe Hendry is just on loan to TNA for the
Literally.
duration of his contract, and then he's coming to WWE.
I mean, we saw it with Jordan Grace, didn't we? We literally
Yeah,
saw it with Jordan Grace. And to be honest, we saw that to an extent with the New Japan talents in AEW. They seem to be like on long-term loans until their New Japan contracts ran out, and then they signed for AEW fully. I think we're just in a world where WWE wants to build its own stars from the ground up, from the colleges, universities, and all these other stuff that they've attempted. And then AEW and getting the guys and girls from AEW is pretty much them saying, well, at least these people have been on TV for 1, 2, 5 years. And we know if we're signing them, there is still a level of star coming over there. I was involved in this whole kind of conversation the other day about, if AEW don't create stars, then why are WWE picking them and stuff like that? No, I think AEW are creating stars, but
yeah,
it seems like they're not reaching their full potential. Hence why they then go on to leave, or like we've talked about, they may have just never wanted to leave WWE in the first place, or WWE was always their aspiration and their goal. I don't believe AEW aren't creating stars per se. I think it's just a case of, yeah, maybe they're just not fulfilling the potential with some of these people. We talked about Mariah May at the top of this conversation. I just think she has pulled a complete blinder. Like, I don't know how she's managed a 2-year deal and she's out of there effectively. I just think that's an amazing situation, which they will probably never hand out to anyone ever again, sort of thing.
nope,
Especially and push
nope.
them so hard like they pushed them in the short term. Like, it's just a cracking situation she's found herself in. So yeah, I think with AEW, we already know, right? I can see this person on TV, their mannerisms, how they perform from on a TV stage and stuff like that. And then I kind of know what I'm getting. Whereas with these other ones, we can put them through our own system. And, because not all of these boys and girls coming through the NXT and stuff are going to be all ready at the same time, sort of thing. So we're still going to need
Yeah,
a level of, I guess the AEW stars, if you like, that have gone to WWE and they already know how to work TV, this, that, and the other, and can come in at a level, while these other ones are still learning the trade. And like you mentioned, they didn't want to give the likes of Stephanie Vaquer big money, but she still went. Will Ospreay didn't want to give him big money. He chose elsewhere. they may have to wait 3 to 5 years before they can get anyone like close to a Will Ospreay. But
Yeah.
the way they're setting up the entire setup of developmental, they're prepared to wait. Like,
Yeah.
ultimately that's what they said to Will Ospreay.
But
If you don't want to come, we can probably make one. Now, I don't agree with
yeah,
that because Will Ospreay is
no.
an extremely special talent, but that's what they're backing themselves. They probably
Yeah,
think that, right, we can't sign Will, but we've got Nathan Fraser. That's and I'm
yeah,
just saying that as Nathan Fraser's
yeah.
brilliant, but he's not Will Ospreay. So
No.
yeah, go on. What are you saying?
No, and I was gonna say like it also works the other way. There are certain people that don't reach their full potential in WWE that have to go to an AEW to do that. Case in point, Swerve Strickland. Swerve
Mm,
Strickland had to leave WWE. He got released from WWE, but we can fully see that he's reached his potential as a top star in AEW under their umbrella because he had to kind of develop into a star where
yeah,
he had something that was working to a lesser extent in NXT. When he went to the main roster, they never really gave him the chance to do that. Then he comes to AEW. He starts off at that as that character, and then he's evolved to the most dangerous man in AEW. This bloodthirsty guy who wants to get the top spot, that wanted to become the first African American AEW World Champion, and now he's a long-term guy that's going to be with AEW at least into 2029.
yeah,
Timeless Tony Storm. Tony Storm in WWE was never able to reach her potential, and she chose to leave. She's not a person that was released. I know we've been talking about a
yeah,
lot of people that got released from WWE, but Tony Storm was someone who chose to leave. She was fed up. We getting pies thrown in her face with the upper echelon of the four horsewomen always being the top stars and everybody else trying to find their foothold to get up to the top. She leaves WWE and she comes in as basically the same character in AEW, and then she goes through multiple character evolutions until she becomes Timeless Tony Storm. And even someone from like AEW started off with a lot of people from your Ring of Honor, from your New Japan Pro Wrestling, and a lot of people were paid to be stars, like a Hangman Adam Page. But the Hangman Adam Page that left Ring of Honor in 2018 was not the Hangman Adam Page that went to the top of the company and became the world champion. They made him go through a character reinvention where he became the anxious millennial cowboy, and the drinking and all of that, and the story with the elite not feeling like he was up to the same level of greatness of Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, and didn't have that connection with them, and that story that they told that led to him winning the AEW World Championship. And then he's further evolved this character from there with the Swerve Strickland rivalry, where he's broken down mentally and he's still trying to redeem himself. Someone from like an MJF that came into AEW, this cocky upstart, and now has evolved into a top star that is going to be here for a longer period of time. So you don't always have to be, oh, these guys don't reach their potential in AEW, that's why they're going to WWE. It goes the same way, and that's what is great about having a second promotion. That's what
yeah,
this industry has been missing for so many years. And like I would have loved if New Japan Pro Wrestling, when they were at their height in the mid 2010s into the late 2010s, could have filled that void as the number 2 promotion, but they were never ever willing to sign big money deals. Tony Khan is a billionaire's kid, but he's a billionaire's kid that started this thing from scratch. So we have to give him credit for that. And I think that the people that overreact and say AEW secretly part of WWE Developmental, you are undermining how important it is to have an AEW, that these people are not just basically pigeonholed into the WWE system of having to break out as a star when there's only a finite amount of positions to be a top star in any company. It doesn't matter what company. And WWE, honestly, with the more AEW talent that they're getting, and they're signing your Rusevs to a big deal and your Malachi Blacks to a big deal, Ricky Saints is working to get a big deal on the main roster. Same with Ethan Page. The more people they sign, like your Jeff Cobbs and your Mariah Mays, this company is becoming as bloated as it was in the late 2010s, which
yep,
led to a bunch of people being released. And I think that we're getting close to that to that level once again, where a lot of guys that should get top spots, like a Carmelo Hayes, like these people that you want to see rise to the top, they're not going to be able to, and unfortunately, they're going to get released and maybe have to go to AEW to reach the potential they're not able to do in WWE, because that roster is becoming as bloated as everybody made a big deal about AEW being just a year ago.
Yeah, you're very right with that point as well. Like it's a cycle. Like they can sign talents and stuff like that, and like we've just mentioned, the rate of what they're producing talents as well. You know, it's kind of even lucky that the NXT lot now have an avenue in TNA where it's like this kind of, you know, right, we can see you're maybe above NXT, but you're not ready for main roster, or we don't have the space for you on the main roster right now. So you've got this other place where you can go and ply your trade and keep the ball rolling, sort of thing.
Look at Trick Williams. Trick Williams gonna have to be in NXT for a couple more months because now he's working a program with TNA World Champion, and now he's being a heel, which they gotta see if that works for him. But he's been ready to be on the main roster for like a year now. But he has to kind of wait because they don't have the space and the spot for him right now.
This is it, and he will be looking at the likes of Aleister Black returning, Rusev returning, and thinking, well, you know, they might be promising me a lot, but am I ever gonna really get my chance, sort of thing, if they're bringing back these guys that have already had the go in the WWE. So it's all swings and roundabouts. It's always a cycle kind of thing. The AEW, like we said, I think more than anything, it probably comes down to, especially with the next flock of people, some of those names that you mentioned, that could be the next batch of people that might try their luck in WWE. These are people that would have grown up on WWE. Like, if not for anything, this is the show they always wanted to work and try and make it on that grand stage. So I agree with you. AEW is not part of WWE Developmental. It is just a case of, you know, everyone maybe just wants to have their go at the big show, or most people, should I say, want to have their go on the big stage. And WWE, being the biggest stage, will always have kind of that number one pick of anyone around the world that they want first. And yeah, that's what the landscape looks like. Any final comments on this topic from yourself?
No, I think this was a fun topic to talk about, and because it's very nuanced, and it, like I said, there's so many angles to look at it, and none of these promotions is perfect. Even though AEW and WWE's number one, AEW's number two, they're not perfect, and there's gonna be like the talent turnover. There's gonna be stars going this way. The pendulum has swung where a lot of AEW people are going into WWE, but I think we've mentioned throughout this last hour that there's been people from WWE that made that choice to go to AEW. And I forgot to mention, like, another recent one was Bobby Lashley, MVP. They chose to let their contract expire and come to AEW to do what they wanted to do in WWE, to be the Hurt Business. So yeah, it's a very nuanced conversation that has two sides. So even though we believe that AEW is not part of WWE Developmental, there might be somebody watching this that does believe that. They just have to be able to articulate that and explain why and understand what a developmental really is.
Yeah, exactly that. Well said. No, Sid, I appreciate you coming through as per, man. Let the people know, please, where they can find you and your good work.
Well, the home where I promote a lot of my stuff is True Heel SP3. That is TRU no E HEEL SP3. That's where you can see a lot of, like, I retweet my written work over at WrestleTalk.com and SI.com. The Takedown on SI. I do some interviews over there, some written work, more like a list over there, so you could check that out. And most of my content work is over at the True Heel Heat YouTube channel, True Heel Heat Wrestling, TRU no E for that as well. And yeah, I'm pretty much there every day of the week, mostly Tuesdays for our Monday Night Raw review at 1:05 p.m. Eastern Time, Thursdays for our AEW Dynamite review, AE Ramble with me and Jimmy Macaram, 1:05 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursdays, and then Saturdays at 11:05 a.m. Eastern Time, the True Heel Heat flagship podcast. So if you want to talk about everything going down in the week of wrestling: WWE, AEW, New Japan, some Stardom, some TNA, some GCW. We talk about it all on our flagship podcast every Saturday. Myself, Miss Chrissy Love, True Jaw Josh, and yeah, and anybody wants me to come on a show and talk some wrestling, I'm always open to do that. But Mex gets first option because Mex is the good brother. Those are my brothers, Mex and the Wrestling's crew. Always full support of them because they do great content. And go over there and subscribe to that channel, and subscribe here if you are new. Don't be sleeping on it. Subscribe and hit the bell for notifications because Mex is doing great stuff here.
Appreciate you, man. Yeah, like he said, people, like, he literally has all the flavors of wrestling on that True Hill Heat channel. So, check it out. It's in the description now if you're lazy and just want to click the at and take you there on your YouTube page. So yeah, make sure you are following along on that particular journey, True Hill Heat. Yeah, guys, appreciate everyone tuning in and the comments and stuff like that. Hit the like button if you haven't. Subscribe if you're new here. I apologize again. I don't know what the hell my camera was on today, but yeah, you can still hear me, so that's the good thing. And yeah, we'll be back tomorrow with Dynamite review and some more podcasts later on this week. WrestleManiac UK signing out, and I'll see you